Just get going. So obviously,
Yeah.
Tony Elliott. Do you want to give us a brief overview of kind of like your career, your coaching career, what you've done, where you've been?
Yeah. Well, currently, mate, obviously, the roles I hold probably work sort of backwards kind of thing. So I think it's just an updated idea of where I'm at. So currently head of goalkeeping at Birmingham City Women in the top league of women's football in England, the WSL. So it's my hometown club. It was my boyhood club. But it's great to be back there working there, within the women's setup. Last season I was at Bristol City, same league. Season before I was at Birmingham. So I've literally come home. So I'm back at Birmingham City Women now. We started okay. The season's we've had a couple of wins. We got beat at the weekend, but we picked up some points and it's got us going. So but as I say, it's great to be working at Birmingham City Women. Currently working with one of the goalkeepers in the England women's senior squad, Hannah Hampton. So we've got a future potential England goalkeeper. Hannah will be 20, I think, in the next week. So she's still very young. Lots of time to develop and evolve, in terms of the way she plays. And I think she's got a massive future. And it's nice for me to be playing a part in that. I've known Hannah since she was 14, 15. So I've played, a part in her career development at different stages. But now I get to work with her every day. And it's good to see her doing so well. And now we're knocking on the door of the England number one shirt, so in the England squad, so that's great. Also, league goalkeeping coach with the England blind and the England deaf squads, although at the moment there's no training camps as such, because obviously with the COVID situation, we're not doing any kind of camps or get-togethers. So hopefully once everything settles, we'll be kicking that back off again in the new year. So again, that will be sort of keeping me busy, as well as my job at Birmingham City Women. But over the years, it's been, I retired when I was 30, Steve. So, I already knew what I was going to do. I wanted to go into coaching. And, since then, I'm 50 now. So I've been coaching for 20 years now, So, it's been a great journey, and long may that continue. And I know it will. So there's still plenty of life in me yet. But over the years, I've had the honour and privilege of holding some fantastic positions and working in some great roles. Club level, I've sort of been head of goalkeeping at Carlisle United with the senior setup, but also as head of academy goalkeeping, as you know, for a season and a half, I think it was, while we lived up there. I've also worked at Darlington when they were in the National League, as it is now. I've held assistant manager roles at Workington Reds, at Whitby Town, at Newcastle Blue Star. So I kind of moved away a little bit from the goalkeeping situation and was more of an assistant coach there to a couple of different managers. I've also worked in young goalkeeper development. So I was a part of the Liverpool FC academy goalkeeping setup for about 6 years, where I ran development centres for them and ended up doing a lot more than that and working in their international coaching schools abroad and various other guises. And then I was doing a similar type thing for Man City for a couple of years. And nationally, I was the league goalkeeper coach for the England futsal squad for 10 years, from 2007 to the back end of 2016. So that was an unbelievable role, fantastic role to sort of have and be part of the development and the building of futsal in this country during that period. I also worked heavily on the coach education side and developing not just the player pathway, but developing a pathway for coaches in futsal goalkeeping. So that was fantastic and exciting to be able to create that from nothing. Also worked with the England cerebral palsy squad, 7-a-side team, and fantastic honour for me in 2016 when we flipped over to become Team GB, and I actually went with the squad and supported the head coach Keith Webb as his assistant coach stroke goalkeeper coach at the 2016 Rio Paralympics. So that's probably one of the biggest highlights of my coaching career. What a 3.5 weeks that was, and one I'll never forget. And you know. So like they all say, you can't take that away from me, so that will live with me forever. So I held multiple roles across different formats of the game. I think currently I've worked across 7 different formats, if you include women's deaf futsal as well, where I was joint head coach with the England squad for a year or so. So, you know, built up my experiences and my knowledge across all of those formats, and hopefully now that shows in my coaching philosophy, my coaching style, and you know, the way I organise and set up and deliver sessions. So lots of experiences, lots of knowledge, and hopefully I can share that with coaches and goalkeepers alike now.
Yeah, brilliant. So I want to touch on that. Obviously, at the same time, you've got a book out, A Modern Approach to Goalkeeping. Yeah. You've worked across multiple formats of the game. How do you feel they've benefited you as a coach, and how do you feel they're benefiting the goalkeepers that you're working with as well?
Yeah, I think, Steve, the biggest challenge when you know, because I was obviously a professional goalkeeper. I was for nearly 14 years before the retirement. So my background was mainstream football, 11-a-side, you know, and the first sort of movement outside of that format of the game was obviously futsal. You know, I didn't know the game, never heard of it, if I'm being totally honest, when I got offered the opportunity to become the goalkeeping coach with the squad. But I wasn't afraid to sort of dip my toe in the water, as they say, and have a look at something different outside of mainstream football. And immediately I knew it was the right decision to do that, because it challenged me straight away. I knew nothing about the game, knew nothing about the role of the goalkeeper within the game. So very quickly, Steve, I had to immerse myself in that world, in futsal. And, you know, in this country, there wasn't any learning for me. There wasn't sort of, in them days, you know, back then we didn't have all the information on YouTube and social media and everything else. It was nothing. I had to start from scratch. So I had to immerse myself in that world and begin to understand and learn, you know, the challenges for the goalkeeper in futsal and what their role was within the game, both in possession and out of possession, but then quickly build a coaching curriculum to befit that. You know, I couldn't just go mainstream football. I will do the same in terms of coaching the goalkeeper in futsal. No, because the formats are different. There are transferables and similarities, but both have a specific set of skills that the goalkeeper requires. So although I could transfer some bits over, I then had to quickly understand that, you know, the futsal goalkeeper needs some specific skills, and quickly began to build, as I say, you know, a syllabus of work and a practice curriculum. So, but that then set the scene when I was asked and offered the opportunity to go and work in the other formats. I did exactly the same with cerebral palsy football, 7-a-side, exactly the same with blind football. Didn't know the games, but before I took the roles, I made sure I did my diligence around it and looked into those games, those sports, those formats of the game before I actually went and had contact with the goalkeepers and the squad. So I had a little bit of an idea of what it looked like, what the role of the goalkeepers was. And then when I hit the ground running with them when I actually joined up with them. And that helped me massively. And that's what I do now. Whenever I get new opportunities or I go and work in a different format, I always try and do some homework before I actually go and do the work with that group of people, and in particular with the goalkeepers, because I'm stepping into a world that I don't know, but they do. So I need to upskill myself and train myself around their formats and their art before I can actually start to challenge them and push them and, you know, question them over, you know, whether they're doing it right or wrong, or whether I can help them develop in the way that I know best. So, you know, that's what it's done for me. It's challenged me, it's pushed me to upskill myself in many different ways. But I think what it does now, Steve, is it gives me a chance to blend my work and mix and match and bring things from different formats that, unless I knew about those formats, I've never tried things, because I wouldn't be able to, because I wouldn't have them in the locker. But now I do. So sometimes I try it works, sometimes it doesn't. But because I understand and know those formats, I can blend them in, try them, and who knows, it might help those individuals, especially in football, that I work with, you know.
Yeah. So is there anything kind of consistent across the board, across all formats, in terms of whether it's like psychological, technical, tactical? Is there anything that remains constant that you carry through everything that you do?
Well, I think, look, and people will say goalkeeping is goalkeeping. We just have to keep the ball out of the net. And it's an old saying that kind of drives me mad, because that tells me that people aren't aware enough of how the role of the goalkeeper has evolved over time, because it has massively. The role of the goalkeeper has changed drastically, in particular over the last 10, 15 years. And now the goalkeeper is much more involved in the game. They play a much bigger part, both in and out of possession. And as goalkeeper coaches, we must be aware of those requirements and those challenges that face the goalkeepers. And there we must enhance them and upskill them to be able to go and cope and deal with situations that happen in games. Listen, there's always a default. Goalkeepers, they catch the ball. In general, they'll dive. They'll have 1v1s. In most of the formats, in sort of mainstream 7-a-side, they'll deal with crosses. But in futsal, blind football, they won't, because of the restriction on the size of the areas that the goalkeepers will be working. So there begins some of the differences. So yes, you'll have your defaults. You work with your hands, you work with your movement, your feet. Obviously, psychologically, there will be different challenges for the goalkeepers depending on the format that they're working in. You imagine, suddenly I can go from working in a mainstream 11-a-side session. 2 days later, I can be dropping into to do a session with the England blind squad, where the goalkeeper is fully sighted, but the players have no sight at all. So that brings its own set of challenges for both the goalkeepers working within that format and also myself as the goalkeeper coach. So the way in which they connect, the way in which they communicate, the way in which they deal with mistakes and things like that by themselves and from teammates has to be dealt with differently. So there's different challenges that are thrown at the players' feet in essence. So managing that side of it will change depending on the format that you're working in. But I think as goalkeepers, you'll always have your go-to sort of default settings in terms of handling, movement as such. But I think for me, the key is managing the difference when you work between the formats, whether that be working in mainstream football, whether it be working in futsal, whether it be working in any of the disability formats. There will be subtle differences in the way the game's played because of the laws and the rules that govern those formats, the areas that we're going to be playing on, and obviously the surfaces that we're going to be playing on. Literally go from 11-a-side on grass or astroturf to futsal on a hard surface. So again, it changes the dynamic. So your goalkeeper is going to work slightly different. The goal sizes. 11-a-side, full-size goal. Then suddenly you're going into blind football or futsal with a mini goal in essence. Like a mini soccer goal. So again, it brings its own challenges for the individual goalkeepers working in those formats. But the practices I would then work on and develop have to befit the role of the goalkeeper in those formats. So defaults, yes. Handling, movement, diving maybe. Obviously in futsal we use a lot of foot saves rather than diving. 1v1, so now you look at blocking, spreading. Those will be transferable, futsal, blind football into football. So, but as I say, I think it's adapting practice and skill sets specifically to the formats that you're working in that are very important, and having the capability to do it like that when you need to. And that's what over the years now I've been able to do because of those learnings and findings that I've taken from being immersed in those formats.
Yeah, brilliant. So I just want to kind of touch on what you said just before there about the game's changed over the past 10 to 15 years. Obviously, we're seeing goalkeepers needing to be more or less, depending on the format, an 11th player. Obviously, grassroots football, you've got 9-a-side, 7-a-side as well, so they need to be that additional player. Yeah. How do you think we can adapt the way that training sessions are done whether it be in a goalkeeping capacity or in team training, how can they adapt to make sure that the goalkeeper gets everything that they need out of a session?
Yeah. I think, over the years, because don't forget, we never really had specialist goalkeeper coaches. So probably, I don't know, there were probably one or two in the late 70s. And then moving into the early to mid 80s, we started to see more, specific goalkeeper coaches going into clubs part-time. I think, in the turn of the 90s, once we got into the 90s, the Premier League, we then started to see full-time goalkeeper coaches coming into a lot of clubs. Now, the full-time goalkeeper coach is probably a must in most professional clubs, and even in some semi-professional clubs, there will be a full-time goalkeeper coach. So the role of the goalkeeper coach is pivotal now. But I think the game as such has evolved that we now recognise the importance of the goalkeeper. And it's, over the years, we've gone from being probably technical heavy, yeah. So most goalkeeper coaches, in those early days, moving through the 80s and 90s, would focus on the technical side, handling, footwork, diving, dealing with crosses, 1v1s. But I think now, probably again, over the last 10, 15, 20 years, there's been this evolution and, of the need, not just for the goalkeeper, but for the goalkeeper coach to understand the importance of them in a tactical sense to the team, both in possession and out of possession. And of course, there's more focus now on the in possession side of the role of the goalkeeper. Like you said, the 11th player or the extra player, depending on the format and the size of the game that we're, in terms of numbers that we're playing in. The goalkeeper now is more and more becoming sort of the orchestrator of attacks and the conductor, I guess, the quarterback, in setting up attacks. And there's more work now needed on that side of the goalkeeper's game. And it's, we talk about, and I'm talking about, the highest level now. Obviously, as you go down through the younger ages, through the phases, it lessens, obviously, of course. But at top level now, the stats tell us that goalkeeper now spends around 75% of the time working with their feet, compared to the rest of the time working with their hands. And of those times when they work with the hands, it's not necessarily making a save. It's just literally having the hands on the ball. So that could be just, literally getting the ball in the hands and setting it to go and then strike a ball as a pass. So there's a massive change now in terms of how much time the goalkeepers are actually spending with the feet compared to the hands. But I think the challenge for us as goalkeeper coaches now, and as coaches in the game, is how much time do we actually spend focusing on the development of our goalkeepers on that side. So what I still tend to find is that there's still that flip the other way. We still tend to work more on the out of possession side, save making, shot stopping, dealing with crosses, 1v1s, things like that. But when you look at the stats, then surely we must be thinking about, well, how can we incorporate more work on support positions, control of the ball, range of passing, that kind of stuff, because that's now what the goalkeepers are spending more time doing when they play the game. So I think that's how it's flipped now. That's how I try and work in my sessions. So in most sessions, if not all, there will be some elements of work with the goalkeeper's feet. And a lot of the time, I'll combine the practices. So even though I might be working on out of possession, save making, shot stopping, dealing with crosses, I'll always try and incorporate some form of distribution, either before or after the out of possession action, if that makes sense. So constantly helping the goalkeeper to develop their work with their feet or distribution with the hand and so on. Yeah. So that's how I think the change is now happening in the game.
Yeah. So obviously, I know you mentioned more so the elite level where it's happening more so. How are we going to prepare, say, a 7-year-old to potentially have to deal with the demands of the elite game should they progress to that standard?
Well, I think, Steve, look, my view is, and people ask me this question, and this is a subjective view. This is my view. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that everybody agrees with, but I think now, because of where our goalkeeper is going to end up in senior football, if they're going to go all the way through the phases, especially at the highest level, the earlier we can incorporate the work with their feet and distribution. So don't forget distribution, not just with the feet, it's with the hands as well, throwing. It's a bit of a lost art. Throwing is still a serious way and a very good way of distributing the ball and setting up attacks and, breaking lines and things. So we must make sure that we develop the goalkeeper's throwing technique as well as their passing range of passing. But the more that we can develop that side of the game as early as we possibly can, the easier it's going to be when they get older and they transition through the phases and at the end, obviously, going into senior football. But the other thing for me, Steve, is not focusing on what we and the goalkeepers would perceive to be their stronger foot. How many coaches actually encourage the goalkeepers and actually spend a lot of time working with them on what they would perceive to be their weaker side? Because I think now when you look at the modern game, especially at the highest level, I'm talking Premier League, Championship, and most of the professional levels, goalkeepers can play with both feet. I talked about Hannah Hampton earlier. She's as good with her perceived weaker foot, left foot, when she's striking the ball as she is with the right foot, purely and simply because it's been practiced over the years. Now, also, she was an outfield player till she was 13, 14. So she's had the opportunity to play outfield. So she's carried that over into her role as a goalkeeper. But she's got great range with both feet. So whenever it goes on that side of her body, or she receives a pass from that side of the pitch, it never worries you that she might be closed down onto her left foot, because we know she can strike it and pass it with as much quality as she has on her right foot. So my advice to coaches would be, get your goalkeepers working on it early, and it can be as fun and enjoyable and as simple as you want to make it in the early years. It can literally be done in games if you want to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a boring technical practice in isolation. But can we get them on the ball, working with the feet as much as we can? Can we encourage them to work with both feet? And can we also get them in situations where they're having to deal with a little bit of pressure and having to make decisions on the when, where and how to distribute the ball? For me, that's key. And then obviously as they get older and they go through the phases from foundation phase into youth phase and then so on, for me, it should then become a lot easier because they've been doing it from a very young age. So as important as it is to give them the understanding of, handling, diving, dealing with high balls and wide balls, 1v1s and so on, I think it's also important, equally, if not more so, in developing their distribution and working with their feet and obviously working on their throwing technique. That's just my view. As I said, subjective. Yeah. Some will agree, some won't. That's how I work. And for me, I know the benefits and I see the results that we're getting with the goalkeepers that I work with.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you've touched on a couple of things that I speak about quite openly. Anyway, I don't think a goalkeeper or a player should kind of be pigeonholed into a position until maybe he's under 12. Mm-hmm. At the very earliest. So that's players kind of like under 7s to under 11s having that opportunity to play outfield, like you mentioned as well, being able to play under pressure, make decisions, execution of different passes and so on. So I think that's very interesting. Obviously, you touched on Hannah didn't play in goal. She was 13, 14. Mm-hmm. And it's now reflecting in her game. Mm-hmm. So I think that's very important. Because I know a lot of coaches, especially grassroots level, they find a kid who says they want to be a goalkeeper. Yeah. And it's brilliant. It's like 10's teeth.
Of course it is.
The other thing, Steve, is,
yeah. Well, you look, and I'm not saying for a second that. Listen, you might find a diamond at 7, 8, 9 years old, an absolute prime for the role of the goalkeeper, and you just know, and they want it, they want to do it. That I'll be honest with you, I was like that. When I was 8, 9 years old, all I wanted to do was be a goalkeeper. As a young Birmingham City fan for my sins, we used to have season tickets behind the goal. and I got to watch some of the world's best goalkeepers literally yards in front of me. I wanted to do that. So you're going to get individuals that want to do that. Who are we to stop them? Who are we to kill that dream, kill that path? We're not. We are in a position where we can't force people to do it. So we can't just say, because we haven't got a goalkeeper, oh, you've got to do it. Yeah. What we can do is encourage people to have a go, is to try different positions, to see what fits for them. If somebody wants to do it perfect, then you allow them to, and you help them and you develop them. You know, and they might do it for a couple of years and they want to go and try a bit of outfield when they're 10, 11 years old. Fine, go ahead. But I think by the time we get to 11, 12 years old, then they're going to have some kind of direction, in my view.
Yeah, definitely.
Listen, you'll have late developers, and we do. And we know that happens. But normally by the time we get to 11, 12 years old, we've kind of got an inkling now as to whether they're going to be a goalkeeper or whether they're going to be an outfield player. But I think those early year experiences of playing a bit of outfield, you know, working in different positions on the pitch, understanding the different roles, dealing with the ball under pressure, not having much time to make decisions. That can only benefit the young goalkeepers as they get older and develop. So, yes, I agree, you know, to allow kids to, you know, have that chance of choosing what they want to do and being allowed to express themselves and go and try different positions. If you find a diamond, then go with it. Yeah, let them do it. Yeah. Don't block that path, because, you know, those are precious moments, and if they want to do it, then you embrace it and you help them. But ultimately, by the time we get to the start of that youth development phase, that's where I think we need to start really honing in on those fine skills. And of course, the tactical side of the game becomes much more important then. And that's when we've got to start really developing that side of the game as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, you've mentioned something that's in my thoughts, and I do say it to parents as well. You mentioned maybe as a kid, 7 to 9, might want to be a goalkeeper. Come 10, they change their mind. Now, going away from kind of like the tactical side of the game to more the psychological, social side of the game.
Yeah.
If that goalkeeper hasn't developed those skills as an outfielder whilst playing in goal, there's a potential there that they may have to leave the team that they've been in for the 3 years due to a perceived lack of ability with the feet and being able to play outfield. So they've kind of lost that support structure. They've lost friends. They've lost that kind of continuity in their footballing. Start their footballing career, their footballing life. So that's one thing I'll always say to parents: give them exposure to everything. Because I mean, we've all seen it. We've seen kids who've been brilliant goalkeepers, 7 to 9, and then they've went on a play field, and then obviously not just themselves, but the parents have got that battle of having to try and find a new team if for whatever reason there isn't space.
Yeah. And of course, you know, it's going to help them with a more all-round understanding of the game as a whole. You know, so if eventually they do end up becoming a goalkeeper and wanting to do that, because they've played in various positions, maybe in the back line, maybe midfield or as a front player, they've got more of an awareness and of an understanding of those positions and the roles of their teammates in those positions, but also the opponents. So they've put themselves in the mindset of players in those positions. What are they thinking? Where they're going to go? How are they going to run? And so on and so forth. So it's just building their knowledge and their understanding of the game as a whole, rather than just seeing it from the eyes of a goalkeeper or just simply as an outfield player. So I think that mixture, it can only benefit that you're kind of creating a little bit of a hybrid, I guess, you know. So learnings from all angles, which I think can only help them, you know.
Definitely. So you've mentioned again, past 10, 15, 20 years, the game's changed so much. Where do you see the game going?
Interesting. It's without a crystal ball, mate. It's hard to say. I mean, you know, the game now. You know, again, they've brought new footballs in, so you know it's lighter, faster. It moves, and you know, again, it's going to bring more challenge. I'm talking about top level, of course, the new Nike balls, but it's going to bring more challenges for the goalkeepers. You know, as you know, they've changed the back pass rule, the goal kick rule now, so. You know, the players can come inside the goal area to receive the ball from a goal kick. And so that's now got people thinking, well, how do we do that? How do we play it from the back? Do we go long, or, you know, do we bring the centre backs into the six, you know, into the 18-yard box to play? And so it's really, really challenging, you know, goalkeepers, players, coaches, you know, in different ways. I was talking to somebody about it, and we had a discussion, like, you know, we even looked at, maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years time, you might have a rush goalie, you know, so you might, you know, like we used to play with kids down the park, you had what we call a rush keeper. So your goalkeeper could literally just come and play anywhere they want, but they were the only one that was designated and allowed to use the hands in the goal. You know, who's to say that the goalkeeper might not wear gloves at that point, you know? So I don't know. It's a strange one. We seem to be moving, you know, that fast with the speed and you know, the way the game's played, and coaching, and, you know, the tactical side and that kind of stuff. You know, you look at some of the top coaches now and the way they're developing and evolving the game. I don't know. Who knows where it's going to go? But they're you know, there's just a couple of things that again have changed over the last couple of years. But also, you know, having had conversation with one or two people, how people might think how it might look in the future. So who knows? They might do away with goalkeepers. So us goalkeeper coaches will be redundant by then, mate. I don't know. So,
was it Leandro at PSG? Is he managing the youth team there, or was managing the youth team? So I've seen an interesting formation come out where he had positioned his goalkeeper when in possession of the ball.
Yeah.
Kind of in front of his two centre halves.
Yeah. Well, you only need to look at, you know, sometimes you see Ederson, you see Neuer playing such advanced positions, so high up the pitch. But again, it's horses for courses. You know, it depends who you're playing for. You know, when you look at City and you know, Bayern and teams like this who have that much possession of the ball, and more times than not, you're going to be spectating as a keeper. Yeah. Then you would play more aggressively, play higher, because you'll be more in contact with the game, because your team are that much in the ascendancy. But I also think it's a bit of a mindset of the goalkeepers. I think it's also dependent on the opposition and the way they set up. You know, so, you know, if an opposition play with a high press, it's going to be difficult for your goalkeeper to sort of play forward and outside the box. Whereas a team set up in a mid-block, well, yeah, then you would expect your goalkeeper to play higher and more aggressive, because that first line of press is a lot deeper and, you know, towards the opponent's goal. So again, it all depends on the individual, the philosophy of the team, of the club, the tactical side of, or the, you know, the philosophy of the opposition when you play against them. You know, how are they going to press you? That would then dictate and determine how the goalkeeper plays. But when you look at the likes of Ederson and Neuer and ter Stegen and goalkeepers like this, they become such a threat when they're in possession of the ball. And, you know, the opposition know that. You know, I recently looked at some clips, put some clips together for somebody around ter Stegen. And you look at some of the work he's done at Barcelona and how aggressive he can be on the ball, and how brave, I guess, and how, I use the term risky, by driving forward outside of the box. And I'm talking not just outside the box 20 yards. I'm talking driving and travelling with the ball 30, 35 yards from the goal, allowing the opposition to press him so that he draws players in, and then passing the ball so he's taking those players out of the game. It's uncanny. You'd never seen that 20 years ago, you know? But that's where we are now. So, as I said to you, who knows? You know, I mean, you know, I've now a big futsal background, 10, 12 years in the format. And one of the sides of futsal is the fly goalkeeper, you know? So, you know, it makes for a fantastically exciting situation when the fly goalkeeper comes out and plays. So who's to say, you know, if a team's losing 2-0 and there's 3 minutes to go, you might not see the fly goalkeeper rule come into football in the future. Who knows? You know, it's risk versus reward, I guess. And they might just nick that from futsal and maybe bring that in one day. But let's see. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah. So, in terms of your philosophy, how are you preparing your goalkeepers presently? I know you work in grassroots as well. So you do a lot independently away from Birmingham.
Yeah.
How are you preparing your goalkeepers, obviously grassroots level right through to elite, for the way the game is evolving?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I mean, look, you've known me long enough now, and I've used it in the pages of the book. There we go. I know you're probably seeing it in reverse there. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, look, I talk about syllabus creation and the practice curriculums and other things in there. But I think the approach now has to be a holistic approach. We can't be too heavy on the technical, tactical side. Obviously, the physical side of the development of the goalkeeper is dependent on their age, on their physical capability, and obviously the needs and requirements of the format that they're playing. But I think for me now, more than ever, the psychological side, and attached to that will be the social side, is huge in the development of, I don't think just goalkeepers, but I think players, and I think, there's been a lot of talk and discussion and a lot of awareness around mental health issues of late, over the last few years. So I think there are now new challenges and difficult times for people. And I think, and again, one of the other things I touch on in the book is connection and building relationships and getting to know the people you work with and what makes them tick. And I think my philosophy now is I always think about the person first and the goalkeeper or player second. Because I think if we get the person bit right and we can connect, we can build up a great working relationship and get to know and understand them. The goalkeeper player part becomes a lot easier because then it becomes an open process between you. I think if you can't connect, if there's a wall between you and the individuals that you're working with, some reason you can't break down barriers, I think it's always going to be a challenge for you. I've been in situations like that, most times, more times than not, the way in which I work, the way in which I operate, I can connect, I can build relationships, find it quite easy. I'm an easygoing guy, very approachable, very easy to talk to, very open-minded. But on occasion, you get the odd one or two that it just doesn't click, it doesn't happen. Now, that's not my fault, it's not their fault. We're not robots. We're not always going to agree and see eye to eye, but you just have to deal with that. You have to manage it. But I think the old saying goes, where there's a will, there's a way. So I think if you work hard enough, if you try and find a way, then more times than not, that connection will happen. So I think the development of goalkeepers now, from my side of it, is as much around, if not more so, around the psych side, connected to the social side, with the coaches, with the players, the other players, is as important as all the other three elements. I call it the 5 elements of development. So your technical, tactical, physical, psychological, social, in no particular order. And each individual will be different, So, where one goalkeeper might need more on the technical side, another goalkeeper might need a lot of work, both on and off the pitch on the psych side. Because that affects so many different things: decision-making, robustness, toughness, resilience. All of those things can affect the goalkeeper in all the other elements if you don't get that bit right, and vice versa. So I think that interlocking, that dovetailing of the different elements of development creates that holistic approach. And that's how I tend to like to work now with my goalkeepers, is not just go technical, tactical heavy. Can we also incorporate the other 3 elements? But as I said to you, more so now on the psychosocial side, because that's a massive part of development of the person as much as the player.
Yeah. I mean, obviously mentioning the technical side, where you're not going too tech heavy. You mentioned obviously in the league game, the footballs. There was a lot more movement on the balls. It's probably now more of a case of making sure that the goalkeeper's effective and they're efficient in what they're doing.
Yeah.
As opposed to being perfect all the time. Again, you said, I think it was near the start, about we need to try. Obviously, the goalkeeper's got to keep the ball out the back of the net, but we need to develop more of the game beyond that. But I mean, as well as that, what might work for you might not work for somebody else in terms of the biomechanics, the way that they move. So is it the case now in terms of technically you apply principles as opposed to a rigid technique of arms must do this and must be in this position, this angle, hands have to be here, and so on? Is it a case of if it works for the goalkeeper and they're not presenting any faults or they're not making any mistakes, then you just kind of let them go?
That's it. Well, listen, I think you've been reading my book, haven't you? Effective and Efficient. Yeah. So again, it's just terms that I use, and I think, and again, I've learned that that's come from futsal, and obviously, I've shifted that into football. It's not always textbook. I think, there are still those in the game. And listen, I'm not going to knock, an individual's work. I'm not going to, dig people out for working along the lines that have produced success from in the past. But I think we've always got to be open-minded to change and evolution, because that's where the game's going. But I think that, understanding of the multiplicity of the goalkeeper and how everybody's different, and it's not one size fits all. But again, in futsal, the time that you get to think about situations is minimal compared to football. So it has to be effective and efficient in the moment. You might not have time to get 2 or 3 steps to deciding. You might just have to throw a foot out, You might not be able to get behind the line of the ball and catch it so you're in line with the ball as you catch. You might just have to throw a hand out and deflect it away. So it's being effective and efficient in the moment and selecting the right technique, won't always be a choice. It's just an adaptation and adapting to the situation. But as I said, being effective and efficient in the moment to keep the ball out of the net if that's an out of possession situation. And that's key. Yes, we can give, and I said to you about defaults earlier, and it's the same. We'll have our basic principles, we'll have our fundamentals, but we've also got to prepare our goalkeepers for the unpredictable and the surprise element, because that will happen. And again, especially at the elite levels, top level, with the cleverness, the skillfulness of the individuals playing the game now. Again, I look at futsal. How many goals are scored with a toe poke? And you see some modern players in football using that now, players in the modern game. But how many goalkeepers actually prepare their goalkeeper? How many goalkeeper coaches prepare their goalkeepers to deal with a toe poke? I've done it with Hannah. First time I ever did it with Hannah, like the ball flew past her and she just didn't know what to do because it was just coming that quick. But it was something that I've been doing in futsal for many years, because that's the way a lot of players score, because the goalkeeper has no reaction time and they catch the goalkeepers on the move or, not in the proper ready position. So they pop it through the legs. So, but you'll see players in the modern game using it now. So we have to prepare our goalkeepers. People talk about dealing with crosses. Well, you'll still see a lot of warm-ups in games where the ball's just delivered from, wide areas, about 20 yards up from the goal line, big hoisted balls into the box. But how many of those types of balls do we still actually deal with in a game? Do we warm up our goalkeepers and prepare them for cutbacks? Do we prepare them for balls that are fizzed across the 6-yard box? Do we prepare them for in-swingers, out-swingers? Do we prepare them for players that might be playing inverted? So in other words, a right-footed player playing on the left, cutting in and whipping the ball, and so on and so forth. So that's what we need to be thinking about now. How many coaches actually look at the game and create sessions, warm-ups that actually befit the situations and the techniques that the goalkeeper is going to need to use in those game situations? And that's where we need to go with it now. Really look at the game, immerse yourself in the role of the goalkeepers, and build your practices that are going to be relevant and realistic to your goalkeepers when they go into game situations.
Yeah. So obviously mentioning futsal, you've brought a couple of things across that you've been working with at Birmingham. How much of what you've learned in that format of the game have you brought over to kind of like the normal not normal format,
mainstream
the
football.
11-a-side format. But
Yeah.
And kind of like, how do you apply that in your training sessions as well? What does it look like?
Yeah. So I think, look, I think the question you're asking me is, what are the transferables? So, I'll give you some idea. You look at now, goalkeepers like De Gea, Neuer does it a lot. Foot saves with the feet. Now I'm not going to suggest it's a new technique, because you can go back and watch clips from the 60s and 70s where goalkeepers have made saves with the feet. Yeah. So it's not something that's new. It just seems to become more prevalent in the modern game now. I think purely and simply because, again, it's a more effective and efficient way of keeping the ball out of the net if the goalkeeper hasn't got time to dive. So what they'll do is they'll use a split save or a lateral split. Yeah. Sometimes they might even use a forward kick through, where the ball's right under their feet. They haven't got time to collapse the body, the feet out the way, and collapse down onto the ball or collapse save. So they use a forward kick through, which is a technique that we use in futsal. A little bit complex for me to explain here, but I'm more than happy to share with you personally the process of working on the forward kick through. So, but again, saves with the feet, big in the modern game now. You see a lot more goalkeepers making saves. Again, goalkeepers like De Gea, people like that, they use it a lot. Blocking, definitely high block, low block. Again, become more prevalent in the modern game. I do think we're losing the art of smothering and diving at feet. I do see a lot of goalkeepers now, and I've been discussing it recently with some other goalkeeper coaches from around the world. About how many goalkeepers now would, in game situations, and I can put clips together where, for me, it's a stonewall opportunity to come and secure the ball and smother it. But I think we've got that ingrained and engrossed in using the block or the spread that we kind of forgot about smothering. So I think I wouldn't say it's a dying art, but we're losing that decision making around, well, my first thought is I want to secure the ball. So if I can come and secure the ball, throw my hands at the ball and smother it, then great. I don't know whether, I'm not going to suggest it's a bravery thing, it's a mental thing, so goalkeepers are frightened. No, it's not that. I just think as coaches, we've probably gone too far now the other way of using the block and the spread too much, and we've forgotten about smothering and securing the ball a little bit. So I'd like to see that maybe come back, because I do think a lot of goalkeepers make too quick decisions around blocking and spreading, where they could ultimately smother the ball. Because our first thought, surely, as a goalkeeper, is to secure the ball and get possession of the ball. So if we can win it by smothering or diving at feet, then fine. But those would be techniques, again, from futsal that you could transfer, because, again, blocking technique is very much a technique that is used in futsal, again, because of the tight proximities to the play that the goalkeepers are in. They'll use that as a save mechanism. I think definitely distribution. I think the amount of contacts that the goalkeeper has in futsal with their feet, and obviously the amount of chances they're going to get to throw the ball, can only enhance and develop the skill set and those two facets of the game. So those would be another two techniques that would definitely, you could shift across from futsal into football. I think there, amongst others, you look at reactions, and the unpredictable. I said to you, toe pokes. Happens a lot in futsal. Shots through legs, through bodies, little deflections, little nicks as the ball's travelling. And because the play is that condensed and the players are that much closer to the goalkeepers, the reaction times are so much more limited. And obviously the ball is different. The ball in futsal is 30% heavier, so there's less bounce, but it travels differently. It will travel through the air differently. So again, it can prepare the goalkeepers for the unpredictable side of mainstream football. So definitely those facets of the game I bring over into football. And it's nice for the goalkeepers because it's different. And the structure of the practices is different and it's exciting. I remember the first time, because in futsal sometimes I use volleyballs, not throw. I actually kick them. You can imagine how light a volleyball is and how fast that's going to travel when you kick it. But I've actually done that with my football goalkeepers, and it blows them away because of the speed at which the ball travels and how it moves through the air. Obviously, I wouldn't do it on a wet, windy day in Birmingham, but on a dry, calm day, there's no reason why we couldn't do that. But it's somewhat different. It produces that unpredictability, and it challenges the goalkeepers in making decisions when they've got very little time to make those decisions. So, that's just a quick idea of something I might use, and just to make the sessions more creative. And again, it will bring some kind of realism to certain situations in a game.
Yeah, brilliant. Last couple from me then, Tony. So I know obviously we've spent about nearly an hour now. It's flown, hasn't it?
Certainly.
What we'll do is, obviously, I know you've given a quick glimpse of the book. If you want to show again, tell what's about. Obviously, a lot of it's been mentioned. Tell what's about. How can we get hold of it?
Yeah, so basically, I think what we decided to do was not to go with any of the big outlets in terms of sales. So basically, anybody that's interested in the book, they'd have to come direct to me, and to do that, they'd need to follow me on social media. So obviously, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as myself, Tony Elliott, LLT. But I'm also on Twitter, so I do go on Twitter and on social media. So my Twitter handle is at TEGK1, the number 1. So TEGK, the letters, and then the number 1. I'm also on Instagram, slightly different. So it's at TEGK01. So if anybody's interested in the book and they want to learn more about, in particular, that psych side of the game, connection, relationships, dealing with individuals, and there are some case studies in there. There's a little bit of stuff around syllabus creation, practice curriculum, amongst other things. As well as experiences from my life and my career and how I've dealt with those situations, and how I share those experiences and my knowledge. It's all in there. But if anybody's interested, they can follow me on social media. Then they can send me a direct message of how to obtain a copy of the book, and I'll give them all the details there. And if they want one, I'll sign it personally. That's the nice thing. So I can actually sign it for them, before they receive it. So whereas they couldn't if we went through various other outlets. So that's how they do it.
Yeah, great stop and feel like great Christmas present for any goalkeeper coach or any goalkeeping enthusiast as well. So, I mean, I've got the book myself. I'd highly recommend it. So, make sure you follow Tony, get in touch, get yourself a copy. Last one then, Tony. Do you have any advice for any current goalkeeper coaches or any budding goalkeeper coaches?
I mean, listen, there's so many bits of advice I could give, Steve. I think the key ones for me are, first and foremost, listen, you're going to get it wrong. You're going to make mistakes, either as a goalkeeper or a coach. But I don't see them as mistakes now. I see them as learning opportunities. And I think that's the way you need to look in life, not just in sports, but we're going to get things wrong at times. But it's how you use that to better you as an individual, as a goalkeeper, as a coach, moving forward. So see them as learning opportunities and not mistakes. I think be yourself. Yes, look at other people, how they work, how they operate, how they connect, and so on and so forth. But you are you. You're an individual. You're special. There's only one of you on the planet. So be you and be something different. Be special. Be somebody that adds value to somebody else's life. That's the key one for me. I think work hard, and work hard, and work harder. That's what I've always done. I've never stopped, and probably to the detriment of my loved ones, my family, and over the years, I've probably been a workaholic, if I'm being honest. But it's brought me great opportunities, brought me a fantastic career and life in football. And I wouldn't change it for the world. But you must work hard. And I think the other thing is be a sponge. Try and learn as much as you possibly can. If somebody says to you, have a look at a different format or go and do a course or a Zoom meeting or a workshop. Go and do it. If you pick up one thing from those situations, and it's been a successful learning opportunity. So don't turn down the opportunity to gain new learning. And those for me would probably be 3 or 4 bits of advice that I could give to anyone. But I think the final one is never be afraid to ask a question. There's never a stupid question. And I say to people, if you want to speak to me, contact me, get in touch. I think for me, the first lockdown period was brilliant because I got to meet and speak with so many different people from around the world who probably were a little bit nervous, a little bit scared about reaching out. But anybody that contacted me or reached out to me, I actually personally contacted them and had many a conversation over the phone, many a Zoom call, many a Skype call, and just chatted and gave them, the benefit of my knowledge and experience. And I don't think I've ever turned anybody down who wants to learn, because for me, I wish when I was growing up, when I was in the early days of my coaching career, that I had that opportunity. I probably didn't. So now I want to be able to do that for other people. So never be afraid to ask the question, if you want to learn. And those would be my bits of advice for you, Steve.
Brilliant. Tony, it's been a pleasure as always, mate.